I always think I can't help it how strong I am, how fast I am. You can always work on those things. You can control what kind of condition you're in. That you are in sole control of that. So I always made sure that was never an issue of mine. And the only way to do that is by working hard and being consistent.
Champions are consistent. That daily grind that a lot of people just aren't willing to do. That
right.
They want to wear a belt. They want to have the success or the accolades, but they don't want to do those little micro executions on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely, you got to be willing to do. If you want to achieve something you never done, you got to be willing to do something you never done.
If you don't have $1 million yet, you're living a much lesser life than what could be easily available to you with the right guidance. My head coach has freed up a few spots in his calendar to hold one-on-one strategy calls with the highest quality applicants. If you're doing well already and you're looking to accelerate your momentum and do even better, click the link in the description now and apply for your strategy session. More at the end of this video.
Today I have the pleasure to chat with Frankie Edgar. Frankie is a 4-time champion at UFC. You had Fight of the Night. You're tied for the most Fight of the Night awards through your career. 8 Fight of the Nights. Tied with Nate Diaz, I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So I met Nate a couple of times, and
Nate's good,
I met his brother Nick as well over the years. But that's gangster. So 8 times most Fight of the Nights in history over there, and you had some amazing career accomplishments. That secured your title from BJ Penn originally, mm-hmm. and fought him a couple more times. Immediate rematch. Went through the Ultimate Fighter show. Right.
Yeah, definitely had a pretty long career. I think I've been in UFC about 15 years now. So definitely been through it.
Where did this start? What's little Frankie as a child going through makes him the success that you've become through your career and in fighting and otherwise?
I was always a rambunctious, energetic kid, getting a little scraps in the neighborhood, stuff like that. And found wrestling a little bit later in life, 7th grade, and wrestled in high school, college, was somewhat successful. Maybe didn't obtain the goals that I set for myself. And after I graduated college, I sought a gym because this Ultimate Fighter show, season 1 was actually my senior year of college. And Josh Koscheck was one of the cast members on there, and he has actually wrestled Edinburgh. We wrestled in the same conference in college. So I'm like, wow, a guy from that I've seen on a regular basis was doing it. And I'm like, wrestling seems like a good fit for it. So let me find a place to train. And I graduated college and found a place, back home, a week later. And I think I fought, 2 or 3 months after that.
Oh, so it was easy. It just started from 7th grade onwards. So, what were some of the work ethic stories? What people tell me, people brought up your name to me many times in casual conversations where they say, Claudia Galdeja, I'm terrible with the names, I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry, Claudia. Galdeja, I believe. Claudia's mentioned that you had an extraordinary work ethic. Caitlin Chukagian's told me that you were an inspiration in her career, that she'd go to the gym and you were world champion at the time, and you're showing up before everybody else, you're staying later than everybody else, you're making your rounds to check on other people and help them out here and there, and at a time where a lot of people might not have given that attention to other people, that you were taking care of yourself at an extremely high level and still had the thoughtfulness to check in on others in the environment.
Yeah, I've always had good people in my life, good coaches, good teammates, and that's why I just emulate myself after those people, after the people that I looked up to, and most of the time they were hard workers and looked out for their teammates, and I just try to follow suit, and hopefully I influence some guys to do that as well, and working hard. I try to do anything I do. I try to do it with pride, and fighting career is no different than that. And I always prided myself on being well prepared. In wrestling, never. I always think I can't help it how strong I am, how fast I am. You can always work on those things, but they come a little bit naturally. It takes work, but you can control what kind of condition you're in. That you are in sole control of that. So I always made sure that was never an issue of mine. And the only way to do that is by working hard and being consistent and being disciplined as well.
A friend of mine, Kerry Walsh, is a volleyball champion. That Kerry had 3 gold medals in the Olympics and a bronze medal. In that sport, as you probably know, you can only get 1 medal per Olympics.
So it's impressive.
At one time, I say this all the time, whenever I think of Kerry, at one time she had a 112-win streak.
Wow.
And she's not playing random people on the beach. She's playing
the best,
other professional people, the best teams in the world.
Right.
112 wins in a row. Anyway, Kerry said that something very similar to you just said, is she said that champions are consistent, and she, that's a theme when you're talking with her. She talks about that consistency of doing that daily grind that a lot of people just aren't willing to do. That
Right.
they want to wear a belt, they want to have the success or the accolades or the rightful self-esteem that would go with that level of performance and that level of execution. But they don't want to do those little micro executions on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. You got to be willing to do, if you want to achieve something you never done, you got to be willing to do something you never done. That's a saying you hear probably, many times, but it's the truth. You want something bad enough, you gotta be willing to do something other people aren't willing to do.
I've thought of that a lot, since at least my late teens. I've had thoughts like that. It's like, well, if I want to have outcomes that most people aren't experiencing, I'm probably going to have to engage in behaviors that most people, wouldn't accept.
Won't engage in,
They don't want to do that. And I've accepted that pretty early in life. I had a thought, late teens or thereabouts, that I thought, well, I think, and I didn't know, man, I had the worst role models as a kid. I had the worst people around me as a kid. But I thought to myself, I think if I just work my ass off for 10, 15 years and just, do everything I could to understand more about business and run businesses and so on and so on, I think you could do whatever the hell you want to after that. The rest of your life, you could probably earn your financial freedom to do whatever you want after that. And that's kind of the direction I set myself on. And I had, along that way, I had different iterations of self-talk. At that time, I had some very negative self-talk that I'd ask myself a very cruel question numerous times per day. So, are you acting like a champ or a chump right now? And meaning, are you engaging in a behavior that would lead to a champion type outcome or a high quality outcome? Or just some 50th percentile behavior that's perfectly acceptable amongst normal people?
Right.
I'm not mad at normal people per se, but I had different goals, and clearly
hold
you had
yourself
different
to a
goals.
different accountability.
And so I use that many times a day when you have those little micro decisions of like, are you engaging in the optimal behavior right now? Is there something you could be doing to be more optimal for having higher quality future outcomes?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
In an act of cruelty, I did that to myself for well over a decade of champ or a chump, or a chump. It wasn't until my early 30s, 30, 32, something like that, that I kind of had a little talk with myself. I'm like, man, why are you still tormenting yourself? You're going to go do the work. But I kind of shifted to more of a thought philosophy of like, all right, if you're going to go do the stuff anyway, why don't you speak to yourself? Why don't you have the most positive possible language or the most respectful, happy language, so long as you don't start lying to yourself or slacking off, so long as you're not violating reality.
Right.
You start telling yourself you're better at something than you are, then that's a different type of consequence. And
right. Difference between confidence and cockiness, kind of, right?
I like a little cockiness,
I
but when you
think,
get into the realm of arrogance, where to me,
arrogance,
cocky.
there you go. Yeah.
In as I define them, Derek's definition of cockiness versus arrogance, like a cocky person might talk a little shit, but they can deliver the goods consistently. And an arrogant person talks a lot of shit, but they don't have. They're speaking beyond their skill set.
Right. Yeah, I like that. Makes sense. But I totally agree with the whole championship mindset. I coach kids. My son wrestles, and I'm always, do champions come to practice on time? Do champions do extra work? And I was like, if you want to be a champion, you got to do what champions do, and you have to have that championship mindset. Like you said, it's, I don't know if it's necessarily bad saying champ or chump, because, you're motivating yourself in a way. But I guess if you're constantly bringing up the negative part, you could, and like you said, you're doing the work. You're putting the work in. Let's leave the negative part behind. Just keep the positive attitude of it. Because I always see too, a lot of teammates talk about this quite a bit. Well, teammates they'll put in extra work. Maybe their conditioning is slacking, and they'll put in this extra work, and their conditioning should be getting better, but they don't believe it themselves. And they still will be out of shape for no reason, because you put the work in. You have to believe. You can't just put the work in and not believe you did it.
It makes me think of something in business. There's a lot of people that, they call it imposter syndrome, that people that maybe they work their ass off and try to do really good, but they have a bit of cognitive dissonance or a lack of self-belief, usually stemming from a father or a stepfather or something earlier in life that told them they were supposed to be a piece of shit.
Right.
And even though they accomplish notable things, some people still have that mindset that they've done things that they've legitimately earned a good place in the world, but they feel that little cognitive dissonance of they don't deserve to be there or they don't belong there.
Right.
Is that a similar type thought?
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm sure it has to be something. I don't feel like I suffer from that. When I put the work in, I know I did it. I almost like, I just look back and it's like when I used to run stairs in wrestling, I would think every step my legs are just getting stronger. I mean, I'm tired, but my legs are getting stronger. I always have a positive. Some people, I don't know if they're maybe doing those steps like, oh, but my legs are just getting weaker. They're just getting weaker. I don't know what they're telling themselves, So, but it could be that like they're just putting a block up of their own.
I hear you. I hear you. What are some of the habits that you had to engage in to have the successes that you had through your career?
I just think, like you said, being consistent and being dedicated and sacrificing, my whole career, I started wrestling 7th grade, which is kind of late considering wrestling terms, at least in my area. My son started at 4 years old, so I was 13 when I started. And, you had to put in extra time. I wanted to make up, a big gap. And I did it in a short time because I just constantly was dedicated and sacrificed. Like I had friends that were going to parties. I was going to practice. Or I had to go. I wrestled on Sunday morning early in the morning. I would go to bed early on Saturday night where my friends were maybe going out and stuff like that. So just those things, constantly hitting it, and always trying to improve myself is what I guess got me to where I'm at.
So you started, you'd be about 12 years old, something like that, when you started wrestling?
I think 13 when I started, yeah.
So I started being serious about martial arts when I was about 42.
Okay, hey.
So how far behind does that put me?
Yeah, hey, better late than never, right? That's it.
I had Jake Shields is my main coach, and he's been fantastic.
Yeah, you're in great hands with Jake.
He spends like 3 days a month with me, and Paulie Malignaggi,
yeah,
boxing.
okay, oh wow, that's awesome.
Paulie spends, he just left my place on Thursday. He spends like 3 days a month.
I know Paul a little bit too, yeah.
So they come over every 4 weeks, and then I have other fellas come over in between that fill in.
Very cool.
And it's been fun for social relationships, and I learn a lot, and I get plenty of bruises and scratches and dings and whatnot that probably I don't have to have in my 40s if I didn't want to, but I'm really learning a lot quickly. I'm actually really very excited about it. I kind of nudged you a couple of times, like, what were the behaviors? What was the, your rituals or work ethic like? And I'm getting the impression that you just took that for granted, that say, oh, you just go do the stuff, do the stuff. But for somebody that doesn't know what the stuff is, like, if you're training for a fight to have the sort of outcome, even to wear the belt one time, to get the belt one time is an amazing accomplishment. There's less than 90 people in the world ever that had one of those UFC belts. And it's even harder to keep that belt. If you got that belt, the whole world is looking at your tapes, looking at training with your former training partners, looking at the tapes and seeing like how does his body move? Where is there a little, not just your opponent, but their whole damn coaching team.
Right.
Is looking at your tapes. Where is there a little void? Where is there a little a part of your movement that is good for some things, but exposes you in certain circumstances? That it's even harder to keep that belt. You're a 4-time UFC champion. Very few people. It might be 20 or less that have done that ever. What were the little micro behaviors of like, how long were your workouts? How long were you said come early, stay late. But could you do a little more detailed dive on that for somebody that maybe doesn't understand what really goes into that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I a training camp, it's an 8-week training camp where it's 8 weeks of, I don't miss a practice no matter what. If I have a doctor's appointment or a schedule, I make sure I get those 2 practices in that day. And it's 2 practices a day, 6 days a week. I'll take Sundays off. But someone like myself, it's that 8 weeks is the deadline. But for someone that's as obsessive as me, I kind of start 12 weeks out. I know 12 weeks is like, all right, now I'm going to start not missing any practices. Then 10 weeks, it's like, okay, now I'm going to turn it up a little bit. Then 8 weeks, it's like really showtime where I'm 100% engulfed in this camp. I got this guy's name on my mind, every day of, who I'm going to fight. And you got to really get after it. It's tough too, because I have 3 kids and I still live at home with my family. I train at home with my family, and, fighting's a selfish sport. So you kind of got to, put those, blockers on and just have that tunnel vision on what the task at hand, not try to get sidetracked by family life, but you also have to do family life in the process, So it's a lot of things you got to juggle. And I mean, a lot of people say I fight with heart, and that's why I think so many fight of the nights. I have the most time in the cage, and I think all those things just show you what type of person I am. And I don't know if I wasn't supposed to be where I was. I am. You know what I mean?
I felt that way about my own life at different times.
Yeah. When I first tried out field, I actually tried out for the Ultimate Fighter show back in 2005. It was the first 155-pound season. And when I went up to meet Dana, I met Dana. He's like, "Man, you don't look like a 55-pounder." And because I weighed 155 pounds when I was a champion, which I cut 0 weight, which I don't think many people do that. Then I fought at 45, and now I'm at 35. But I kind of call myself the undersized overachiever. Right from the get-go, I had the boss of the company telling me I'm not I don't belong there. And that was motivating for me to go out there and, not only I didn't get on the show because I didn't get picked, but I got called, 4 weeks later, and that's how I got my UFC debut.
Sweet. 155. A lot of people wouldn't know that. I've trained with Mike Chandler different times before, and he's weighing 190.
I know, yeah.
And then cutting down to 155.
Right, exactly. I actually brought Mike Chandler out to train quite a few times. Good guy. But yeah, he's a lot bigger than I am.
Well, he's dropped on my ass more than 100 times.
Okay,
Single leg, single leg, single leg, double leg,
yeah.
single leg, single leg, double leg. So we've had a couple experitions together. Great guy. He's invited me to his home. He's been to my home. And,
he's an excellent
I think of him
guy,
as a good friend. Shout out to
sure.
Mike Chandler. I think a lot of people don't understand that weight cut thing. That that's a guy shows up and he gets on that scale and he's weighing 10%, 12% more the next day on fight day, and that would be the traumatic. To me, that'd be the most traumatic part. That it's like all right, you got to do all this training, develop an extraordinary skill set in various disciplines. Go get punched in the head numerous times, sparring a few times a week.
Right.
And then, but then, before you go do the event, before you have your fight day, you have to, torment yourself to change your body composition dramatically, change it back, have some Pedialyte or whatnot, and try to change it back as quickly as possible. Like that, it's really quite a feat that a lot of people are unaware of that process. Or
I come from the wrestling background, so cutting weight is no, nothing new to me. But I wrestled 141 my senior year in college, and I fought 155 because that was at the time in 2005 that was the lightest weight there was available in the UFC. So that's why I just ended up at 55, and then they introduced the 45-pound weight class, but I was already champion at 55, so I didn't want to go down. And then eventually, I made my way down, and even made my way down to 35 because I really only weigh 155 pounds, really. So cutting to 35, I'm probably not even the biggest 35er out there,
What are your thoughts about sparring? I hear you're a guy that you liked that sparring, or you'd like to more physical contact. That
I do. I know.
It kept you sharp.
We come from a gym where we spar 3 days a week. We turned it down. We toned it down. We used to spar 3 days a week, which is tough because, like 8 weeks out, 3 days a week, you're sparring, you're fighting 24 times in that camp, if you think about it. And that adds up. 24 fights in a camp adds up. And I think really a lot of people say, fights are bad on your body, but the training's probably worse. You put so much more time in training, you fight only 25 minutes. It looks bad, you see cuts and stuff like that, but the wear and tear really happens in the training, And I just feel like sparring, the best way to get in shape for a fight is by fighting, And I know you see a lot of different takes on that. Some people don't want to spar that hard, and I just feel like, maybe not where I'm at in my career. I don't need to spar as much because I've done so much of it. But I think new guys that have not sparred much, I think you kind of need to get thrown into the fire a little bit, You can do it a safe way. I think if you get rocked and I grew up, I'm started in 2005, so a little bit different. My first fight ever was in a New York Underground fight where there was no rules. I headbutt the guy. I was wearing the same gloves I was wearing for a month. There was no weigh-in. There was one 15-minute round. So I came from that into where we sparred all the time, probably sparred with the little gloves, no headgear, and then we learned throughout the years. And we probably toned down the sparring, trying not to take too many headshots.
Chuck Liddell was over this last week. He was training with me for 3 days, and Chuck's weighing 245, and we're starting in compromised positions where I'm he's pinning me down to start with, and I got to
Right.
fight my way out of that and get back to my feet or whatnot. So I still have some bruises on me that are several days old. Chuck told me a story from back in the 90s. He said he had a fight in Brazil, and he said they did, 30-minute round,
Wow.
30 minutes without a break.
Wow.
And to have 3 fights to win this tournament, you'd have, 3 fights in a night. If you wanted to win that tournament, 3 fights in a night, 30 minits each.
Yeah, I can't imagine fighting multiple times at night.
Bare knuckle, no gloves.
Yeah, that was different days back then.
Yeah, I mean, he said the fellow that won that tournament, his head was so misshapen that it's swollen and misshapen in numerous ways. And
Yeah.
the guys are, it takes a certain type of person that wants to even involve themselves in
Right,
something like that.
absolutely.
So he said the guys are tough as hell, and said fellas like shoulder checking him the day before and trying to have a little kerfluffle in the locker room.
Yeah.
And he's like, man, I don't speak Portuguese. I don't know how to tell this guy, but he's like, wait till tomorrow. Like, we get paid tomorrow.
Yeah,
we
right,
get paid tomorrow
right,
to do
right.
this. Like, I'll fight you tomorrow, no problem. But we get paid tomorrow. Let's not hurt each other and not be able to
Make
to
that
get
money.
paid.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a different mindset. And I've had a chat with Hoist Gracie from back in the day
Right.
when UFC first started. He won the first tournament. You got to fight 3 men in a
3
night.
times, yeah. It's
And then the
unreal.
second one, I believe, is 4 men in a night, and so on. That's those are extraordinary times at that time. And what you're saying is like these underground. You've been around for a lot of the evolution of that
Yeah,
sport.
for
That
sure.
you are one of those OGs that's extremely respected. That you've watched that evolution from something that people weren't making enough money to cover their medical bills. It's
Right.
something that you're really doing because you loved martial arts and it's
Yeah.
from your heart.
Yeah.
You watch this video all the way through, and that tells me you're dedicated to learning more and earning far above average outcomes in your life. Congratulations for that. But now it's time to take action. If you could have earned those results by yourself, you would have done it already. My head coach has opened up a few spots on his high-demand calendar for an in-person, one-on-one strategy session to help you. On this call, we'll give you the pragmatic advice that you can implement tonight to get laser-focused on the right metrics and leave mediocrity far behind in your past. Click that link right now in the description below and apply for your call immediately. Do it now.